Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janavalabha Girivaradhari Gopi Janavalabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Brajajanaranjana Yashodanandana Brajajanaranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janavalabha Girivaradhari Gopi Janavalabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Brajajanaranjana Yashodanandana Brajajanaranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Govinda Radha Govinda Radhe Jaya Jagannatha Jagannatha Jaya Baladeva Jaya Subhadra Jaya Giri Govardhan Giri Govardhan Giri Govardhan Jaya Giri Govardhan. Jaya Goranitai, 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 Jaya Goranitai. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Srila Prabhupada. Gaur Premanandi Hayaribo, Jayom Vishnupad, Paramahansa, Paravajika, Acharya, Asatar, Sri Shriman. ISKCON BBT Founder Charles Divine Grace AC Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Nitya Lila Prabhishya Om Vishnupad Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavinda Ki Jai. Nam Acharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Sakahosh Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktivedanta Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopana Shama Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Mirjapadam Ki Jai, Nabadi Mayapurdam Ki Jai, Ilachal Jagannathpurdam Ki Jai, Gangamayi Ki Jai, Jamunamayi Ki Jai, Bhakti Devi Ki Jai, Bhakti Tulsi Maharani Ki Jai. It was beautiful, Lord Shri Shri Radha Govinda Ki Jai, Shri Shri Jagannath Maladev Subhadra Ki Jai, Shri Shri Gaurnitai Ki Jai, Samaveta Bhakti Vrinda Ki Jai. Going back to home, back to Godhead Ki Jai, ISKCON New York Yatra Ki Jai, Brihad Madanga Transcendental Book Distribution Ki Jai, International Food for Life Transcendental Prasadam Distribution Ki Jai, Shri Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai, Nitai Gaur Premanandi, Hari Hari Bo. All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to Shri Shri Guru and Gauranga, Lord Srila Prabhupada. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Deving Sarasatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Hudirayat. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, let us offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of God and Lord Narayan, unto Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author, and unto Srila Prabhupada, who is the translator, commentator, and our spiritual master. Nashta prayeshu abhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavati uttama shloke bhaktir bhavati naishtaki. By regularly attending the Srimad Bhagavatam class and by rendering service unto the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving devotional service unto the personality of Godhead, whose worship with transcendental songs becomes established as an irrevocable fact. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we're continuing reading from the fourth canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, Creation of the Fourth Order, and we're still in chapter 14, the story of King Pena. It's a double verse, 39 and 40. We'll just do the first one responsively, then I'll read the second one and short purport. Tad upadarvam agyaya lokasya vasulumpatam Bhartayuparate tasmin Anyonyang cha jigam satam Tadupadravam agyaya Lokasya vasulumpatam Bhartayuparate tasmin Anyonyang cha jigang satam Tadupadurvam agyaya Lokasya vasulumpatam Bhartayuparate tasmin Anyonyang cha jigang satam. Please chant. Tad upadravam agyaya Lokasya vasulumpatam Bhartayuparate tasmin Anyonyang cha jigang satam Tad upadravam agyaya Lokasya vasulumpatam Bhartayuparate tasmin Anyonyang cha jigam satam. Vaishnavins, Tad upadravam agyaya Lokasya vasulumpatam Bhartayuparate tasmin Anyonyang cha jigang satam. Any of the other Vaishnavins? You should chant. When Prabhupada was here, it would be like 20 or even more men chanting, and then he would let the ladies chant, at least half a dozen of them. And that's how you start to remember. If you don't repeat, repetition is the mother of learning. So when you come to Bhagavatam class, you should be prepared to chant. Anyway, if nobody wants to chant, we'll go on. So the next verse, I'll just do myself, and then we'll do the synonyms and the translation. Chorapayang janapadam hina sattam harajakam lokanavarayan chakta apita dosha darshinaha. So, synonyms. Tat, at that time. Upadravam, the disturbance. Agyaya, understanding. Lokasya, of the people in general. Vasu, riches. Lumpatam, by those who were plundering. Bhartari, the protector. Uparate, being dead. Tasmin, King Bena. Anyonyam, one another. Cha, also. Jigang satam, desiring to kill. Choraprayam, full of thieves. Janapadam, the state. Hina, bereft of. Sattvam, regulation. Arajakam, without a king. Lokan, the thieves and rogues. Na, not. Avarayan, they subdued. Shaktaha, able to do so. Api, although. Taddosha, the fault of that. Darshinaha, considering. Srila Prabhupada's translation for this verse. Upon seeing the dust storm, the saintly persons could understand that there were a great deal of irregularities due to the death of King Vena. Without government, the state was devoid of law and order, and consequently there was a great uprising of murderous thieves and rogues who were plundering the riches of the people in general. Although the great sages could subdue the disturbance by their powers, just as they could kill the king, they considered it improper on their part to do so. Thus, they did not attempt to stop the disturbance. Please repeat. Upon seeing the dust storm, the saintly persons could understand that there were a great deal of irregularities due to the death of King Vena. Without government, the state was devoid of law and order. And consequently, there was a great uprising of murderous thieves and rogues who were plundering the riches of the people in general. Although the great sages could subdue the disturbance by their powers, just as they could kill the king, they considered it improper on their part to do so. Thus, they did not attempt to stop the disturbance. Srila Prabhupada's purport. The saintly persons and great sages killed King Vena out of emergency, but they did not choose to take part in the government in order to subdue the uprising of thieves and rogues, which took place after the death of King Vena. It is not the duty of brahmanas and saintly persons to kill, although they may sometimes do so in the case of an emergency. They could kill all the thieves and rogues by the prowess of their mantras, but they thought it the duty of Kshatriya kings to do so. So thus, they reluctantly did not take part in the killing business. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamini Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Prachayane Nirvashesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshtarane Om Agyana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Jaina Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtang Sthapitang Jaina Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeyahang Shri Guru Shri Yutapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishyavangscha Shri Rupam Sagajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vatam Tang Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parajana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vatangsha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namosate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishavanu Sute Devi Pranamami Haripriye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Krishna Pak Sindhuvi Evacha Patitanang Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So is this a fairy tale or is this factual? That there are persons who have such potency that they can kill somebody just by reciting a mantra. Do we actually believe that? Yeah, okay. Sometimes, even in our modern experience, we find that you can scare somebody to death just by saying boo. Isn't it? It's Halloween. Everybody's dressed like ghouls and goblins and all kinds of weird creatures, and somebody sneaks up behind somebody and says, boo, and they fall over from a heart attack. So yes, you can kill somebody by sound vibration. It is a fact, it's not a fairy tale. We learn from the Mahabharata that there was one king called Mashapad, who was a very, very pious king. Actually, not beyond pious, he was a devotee. But there was someone who was very envious of him. And they kept trying to kill him in different ways. And finally they sent a Brahma Rakshasa to kill him, but the Brahma Rakshasa couldn't get through because he was such a potent devotee. But some or other, one day, he went to answer the call of nature and didn't cleanse the body properly When you go to answer the call of nature, you have to clean your body properly. And because of that one mistake, that Brahma Rakshasa was able to enter his body and take over. And so now this pious king, who was the protector of the citizens, became the attacker of the citizens. He would, when this Brahma Rakshasa had decided it was time, he would attack, not just attack, he would kill them and eat them. He became a Rakshasa externally. What to do? So one time he attacked the great sage Vasishta Muni. He approached with the same intention to kill him and eat him. But the sage was so powerful, just by saying hum, he froze him. He couldn't move. So yes, there is this potency that when a person is, and it's not necessarily a spiritual potency. One can be, as we know, if you are a practitioner of the Eightfold Mystic System of Yoga, you can get powers, material powers that are unbelievable. Prabhupada said even within his memory, there was one yogi who had such powers. He came down from the mountains, came to Calcutta, bewildered so many people with his magic power, his mystic power, took their money and then went back. So it's not necessarily a spiritual power. Sometimes people are bewildered. If somebody has, some potency, they can manifest something in their hand. That's Prapti Siddhi. Prapti Siddhi means you can reach far away. Sitting in Delhi, you can reach to Afghanistan and take some pomegranate. But what's the use? You can go to Trader Joe's and buy pomegranate. It's not such a big deal. But people are bewildered by that kind of thing. Somebody can produce some ashes, so-called vibhuti, and they become, oh, he's such a great person. Let me surrender to him. So one time Prabhupada said, because somebody had asked him, Swamiji, can you show some mystic power? What mystic power are you looking for? Oh, there's this yogi, he can produce some apples. Just out of thin air, he can make an apple. So Prabhupada said, I have so many temples all around the world. And in each temple, there are so many devotees. And those devotees have so many apples. It's not a big deal to produce one apple. He said, my real mystic potency, if I have any, is that I can convert Malechas and Yavanas into devotees of Krishna. And I don't know about you, some of you took very high birth, but I didn't, so I know I can factually substantiate Prabhupada's statement that this Malecha Yavana is at least trying to become a devotee of Krishna. So this is a real potency. This is a real potency to convince a materially entangled and a materially attached, not just entangled and attached, but wishing for more and more attachment. Take such a person and convince them to take to the path of real spiritual practice, real Krishna consciousness. That is real mystic potency. So how many of you were listening this morning to what was read? My glasses broke, so I had Hansarupa read. Very, very important verse and purport. So he read a fraction of the purport in which Prabhupada was talking about what? What was the topic? 16 rounds was one of them. But the main thing was always remember Krishna, never forget Krishna. That's a verse that everybody should know. Smartavyak satato Vishnu, Vishmartavyak najatitit. Sarvavidi nishedyaksu etayo eva kinkara. So that's from the Srimad Bhagavatam. Mentioned in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. So I'm going to read that verse in purport because it's very important. So this is the 22nd chapter of the Madhya Lila, and this is verse 113. Again, Smartavya satatang Vishnu, Vishmartavya najatitit, Sarvavidi nishedyaksur etayo eva kinkaraha. So the translation is, Krishna is the origin of Lord Vishnu. He should always be remembered and never forgotten at any time. All the rules and prohibitions mentioned in the Shastras should be the servants of these two principles. So this is the entire purport. He only read a fraction. And well, that's what was quoted in Preaching is the Essence. So this verse is a quotation from the Padma Purana. There are many regulative principles in the Shastras and directions given by the spiritual master. These regulative principles should act as servants of the basic principle, that is, one should always remember Krishna and never forget him. And where does Krishna demand that? In the Bhagavad Gita. Twice that verse is mentioned. Man mana. This is the beginning of spiritual life. Man mana. Remember me. Always think of me. If we don't, we remember what we think of. If we don't think of Krishna, we're not going to remember him. If we think of our high school escapades or, things that we want in the future, that's what we're going to remember. So Krishna is demanding because he's God. Prabhupada said when Krishna comes in his original form, he demands. He's God. So he's demanding. He's not asking. Man mana, Baba Mad Bhakta, Madhyaji Mam Namaskuru. Always think of me, worship me, offer your homage unto me. He's demanding. He's not asking. So if we think of Krishna, remember him. This is possible when one chants the Hare Krishna mantra. That's why we're being pushed to always chant Hare Krishna. If we chant Hare Krishna, we'll start to remember Krishna. Think of Krishna, remember him. Therefore, one must strictly chant the Hare Krishna Mahamantra 24 hours daily. One may have other duties to perform under the direction of the spiritual master, but he must first abide by the spiritual master's order to chant a certain number of rounds. So our path is numerical strength. You chant with numerical strength. And Prabhupada pointed out that even Lord Chaitanya was God himself. He would chant with a numerical strength. In that pastime when he was getting ready to go to South India, Nityananda said, well, you should at least take a kamandalu and a rod with you. But if you do that, how are you going to count your rounds? Because he was counting his rounds on both hands. So Nityananda was trying to trick him to take him along, but he said, no, you go to Bengal. In our Krishna consciousness movement, we have recommended that the neophyte chant at least 16 rounds. That's why we have to promise when we get initiated, 16 rounds. There are other societies who say, nah, you can promise only to chant 4 rounds. But that's not what Prabhupada asked us to do, 16 rounds. This chanting of 16 rounds is absolutely necessary if one wants to remember Krishna and not forget him. Again, which is the topmost achievement. Always remember Krishna, never forget him. Of all the regulative principles, the spiritual master's order to chant at least 16 rounds is most essential. Now, that doesn't mean we take all day to chant 16 rounds and we don't do any practical service. So the next paragraph is going to point out this fact. One may sell books or enlist life members or render some other service. But these duties are not ordinary duties. So, yes, we must promise to chant 16 rounds and we must do it, but we have to have time to engage in practical devotional service also. Prabhupada said, work now, samadhi later. Not that I just want to spend all day just Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Some devotees chant their rounds like that. Like it's a kirtan. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Now everybody's going to have different speeds. We're differently situated. I remember one devotee that used to be here in New York. He would take a long time to chant his rounds, but then he would go out on book distribution and he would do so much service around the temple. A lot longer time to chant rounds than everybody else, but he was focused and he would do his duty. Didn't use it as an excuse for not doing anything. He was such a steady book distributor, you could literally write it down on the score sheet before he came back. Every single day, 35 books would go out. He would never make like 100, but he would never fall down to like 2 or 3 either. Practically every day, 35 books would go out. So this is what we're supposed to be, reliable servants of the spiritual master. Reliably follow the principles, reliably chant your rounds, and reliably do some kind of practical service. These duties serve as an impetus for remembering Krishna. When one goes with a Sankirtan party or sells books, he naturally remembers that he's going to sell Krishna's books. Sometimes they don't. There was one devotee, a little bit pagla, from my estimation anyway. He went to some white supremacist gathering, and he was distributing Prabhupada's books, telling him that this book will cement your understanding of white supremacy. And some of them foolishly bought the books, and when they read it, they didn't find anything in there about white supremacy. They actually called BBT and complained that your person's lying. He sold us this book telling us that it was about white supremacy, and it has nothing to do with that. So yes, we should remember that we're distributing Christians' books and distribute them in an honest way. When one goes to enlist a life member, he talks about Krishna and thereby remembers him. Smartavyak satatang Vishnu, Vishmartavyo najachachit. The conclusion is that one must act in such a way that he will always remember Krishna, and one must refrain from doing things that make him forget Krishna. These two principles form the basic background of Krishna consciousness. So obviously this King Vena, he was not in this mood. He was not in the mood of remembering Krishna. By Krishna's grace, he attained a high position in society. But whatever position we attain, high or low, we should take it as Krishna's mercy. Whatever position we find ourselves, this is what distinguishes devotees from non-devotees. The non-devotees are always hankering for more. They pray, even if they have a little bit of piety, they go to pray just to see if it works. They pray to God, okay, prove that you exist. I want this, I want this, I want. And they get it. Maybe not immediately, but it comes. Because Krishna is merciful. But when it comes, instead of being satisfied, instead of thanking God, they go back and demand more. Or they want more. So this King Vena, he got a high position. Naradeva, he was supposed to be God's representative on earth. But instead of that, he vilified God. He blasphemed God, and that's the last straw. That's why the Brahmanas killed him. Before that, he was blaspheming them. He was calling them all kinds of, you just like foolish children, you don't realize that I'm great. They didn't react, but when he started blaspheming God, then they said, okay, that's enough. And they killed him just by munching. So we should take that seriously. That whatever position we're in, we should always remember that it's Krishna's mercy. And be thankful, be grateful, and use everything that we have in Krishna service, whether it's a little or a lot. And there's that story of one pseudo-devotee. He goes to the temple and he prays that, my Lord, I'm going on this business trip. If you make me successful, I will give you half of my profit. Okay, so he goes on a business trip and he does very well. He's coming back with a boat full of profit, gold coins. But on the way, a storm came up and he lost half of it in the river. He was able to save half. So then he goes to the temple and the deity says, how was your trip? Deity was talking to him because you talk to the deity, deity can talk to you. Well, my Lord, deity says, well, you did okay? Well, my Lord, he said, well, where's my 50%? He said, well, I thought you took it. It fell in the water. Don't be crooked like that. Whatever we have to keep our promise. If you promise Krishna 50%, give him 50%. Don't say that the 50% that was lost in the river, you took it. No. Whatever is left, you give Krishna. So this king, again, misleader. And we see in the modern context, the world is full of misleaders. They have no idea, no clue what is the goal of life and how to achieve it. Which is what like Prabhupada said, even if you have secular government, we're not saying that you have to have religious government. Even if you have secular government, but the secular government has to see that people follow some specific religious path. If you claim to be a Muslim, then follow Islam properly. If you claim to be a Christian, be a good Christian. Claim to be a Hindu, be a good Hindu. There has to be some religious sentiment. Otherwise, the people will not benefit. They will simply slide into sinful activities. Prabhupada said that's the distinction between even modern-day India and the rest of the world. Even the common man to this day in India still believes in karma, that I have to live my life in such a way that I don't get negative karmic reaction, that in my next life I will be at least elevated. Still, most of them believe like that. Whereas in the Western countries, people are so sophisticated, they think this is just fairy tale. Religion is the opiate of the masses. So if you guys want to be opiated, that's okay, but we don't want to go that way. They don't understand that whatever they have materially is a gift from Krishna based on Previous pious activities. Previous pious activities. There's that verse I've recited many times, but it's very instructive in terms of understanding karma. It's from the 10th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Eka prasuyate jantu, eka esha praliyate, eko nubungte sukritam, eka esha chaduskritam. It says, every living entity is born alone and dies alone, and alone has to enjoy or suffer the reactions to their good and bad deeds. That's the law of karma in a nutshell. You're born alone, you're going to die alone. Even if you die in an airplane accident, like happened recently in India. This plane fell out of the sky and everybody died except for one guy. But it doesn't mean that they all died in the same way at exactly the same moment or they're going to get the same destination. No. Everybody, according to their particular karma, is going to get a different destination. And this one guy who walked out of the plane, obviously, it was not his time to go. But everybody has their time to go. Jatasya hi dhruva mrityu dhruvam janma mritasya cha. Second chapter, Bhagavad Gita. Krishna says, for everyone who is born, death is certain. And after you die, rebirth is certain. You're going to appear somewhere else. It's not the end of everything. But the nature of that rebirth, you could even call it a reincarnation. The word carne means flesh. So the word reincarnate literally means to be put back in the flesh. You were in a fleshy body, you got taken out of it at death, and now you're being put back in another one. Because when you die, you remain in your subtle body, not the fleshy body. You remain in a subtle body, mind, intelligence, ego. And in that subtle body, you're brought before Yamaraj. Most people, anyway, are brought before Yamaraj to be judged. And then later on, after some time, you get put back in the flesh, reincarnated. Where we're going to go next, that depends on how we act in this life. And we're also going to leave. It's not that devotees of Krishna are going to necessarily go back to Godhead in this particular body. No. Just recently, a few days ago, if you notice at the top of the screen, if you go to this online database right now, you'll see at the top of each screen it says, we will miss you, dear Ekanath Prabhu. We are very grateful for everything you have done. So my god brother, Ekanath Das, he passed away. Just like that. He was maybe a year or two older than me. And he had just had a phone call with another god brother that I know. Hung up the phone and he was gone. His wife was in another room. She came in and he was gone, just like that. They say it was heart failure. As far as I'm concerned, that's a glorious way to go. Personally, I don't want to be, gradual decline, hospitalized, and people have to come around and take care of you. I don't want that. Personally, I pray to the Lord. Just let me go like that. Or in my sleep. I go to sleep one night, you don't see me at Mongol Arctic, so you come, you knock on the door. Open the door, and there's the body. I don't want to give trouble to anybody. So Ekanath, bless his soul, because he was such a nice devotee. And all interactions I had with him anyway were very pleasant. He was a gentleman. Originally from Holland. He hitchhiked from Holland all the way to Mayapur. Because he had come in contact with devotees, he wanted to be a devotee. He hitchhiked. Oh, I wouldn't suggest you do that now, because you either have to go through Afghanistan or Pakistan. And I wouldn't suggest either route. Nowadays, I would not suggest doing that. But back when Prabhupada was on the planet, it was relatively safe. Devotees even drove, because Hansaduta Prabhu had bought a bunch of vans for Sankirtan in Europe, Mercedes vans, and they actually drove all the way across Europe and to India. So he did that, and he was wearing, those traditional wood clogs that they wear in Holland. He wore a pair of those all the way across on his journey from Europe to Mayapur. And as soon as he got to Mayapur, they broke. It was like a sign, don't think of leaving. So he threw them in the garbage. And the next day, Prabhupada was there. He was walking. He said, whoa, what's that? And somebody told him the story of the wooden clogs coming all the way from Holland. So we're also going to go. We should take it seriously. It's not that because we're chanting Hare Krishna, necessarily we're going to stay on this planet forever. But who wants to? If we look in our Acharya line, our Acharyas, how long did Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself stay? At what age did he leave? 48. Yeah. We're not necessarily looking to live forever in this body on this planet. We should be ready to go at any moment, because death can come at any moment. And Prabhupada noticed, we don't take that seriously. We think we have forever. Yes, you're going to live forever, but not necessarily in this body. For sure not in this body. Who wants to live in this body forever? We're thinking this body is such a nice place, but Gargamuni Prabhu, in his memories, one of his memories of Prabhupada, I think it was here on 26 2nd Avenue, anyway, somewhere in the early days. He said one tall, beautiful woman came to the temple. And she met Prabhupada and she asked a good question. She said, if God is so kind, why did he make this miserable world where there's such misery? The Vietnam War is going on and, social upheaval, human rights, people were fighting for. Social rights. So many things were going on that were not nice. So she asked, why so many bad things going on if God is good, and why did he make such a terrible place? So Prabhupada told her, it's a little bit graphic, but he was trying to make a point. He said, just like you're beautiful, but when you go to the bathroom, nasty things come out. So he was indicating that Krishna made this nasty place because we want it. We are thinking that everything is wonderful, and only when something bad happens, somebody we like dies. So many people are dying every day. We don't care. But if somebody that I know, especially if I like them, if such a person dies, oh, it's horrible. It's horrible. Death is horrible. Yes, death is horrible. To wake us up to the fact that we don't belong here. This entire planet, this entire universe, it's a killing field. Death is imposed upon the deathless. We're actually by nature deathless. But it's imposed upon us, so we should ask why. Why my father died? Why my friend died? Why do I have to die? Ultimately, we should be asking. And then the answer is there. That because we have accepted this material body, then the inevitable end of the body, death, has to be there. We cannot avoid it. Those who are spiritually advanced become self-realized. They realize that they have nothing to do with this fallible material body. And when we realize that, then we actually become joyful. Prior to that, whatever so-called happiness people are having in this world, it's temporary and not factual. Practically our whole life is an endeavor to avoid misery and squeeze some happiness out of this place. But even if we do, temporarily, we see it doesn't last. It doesn't last. So an intelligent person starts to wonder. Unfortunately, some get led into nihilism. They think it's all meaningless. It doesn't have any meaning. So it doesn't matter if you live or you die, and whatever you want to do, it doesn't have any. No, it has meaning. It's a purpose. There's a purpose behind everything. You just have to find somebody who can instruct you in what is that purpose, what is the ultimate goal, how to attain it. Otherwise, we just keep going around like a dog chasing its tail, trying to find happiness this way, that way. Our dear God brother Surya, they were brought to know, so maybe the rest of you don't know, Surya Prabhu was well-known Sankirtan devotee, great Prabhupada man. But one of his favorite verses was this verse that Sukhaya Dukkha Mokshaya Kurvanti Dampatikaya Tata Anirviti Apraptir Dukkasya Cha Sukhasya Cha. Because the question comes, why do people get married? Why do people get married? And this was Sankarshan instructing the 4 Kumaras who were lifelong brahmacharis. So why do people get married? Sukhaya Dukkha Mokshaya. They want to increase happiness and decrease Sukha means happiness, dukkha means unhappiness. So marriage, or not just marriage, everything we do practically is for that reason. For that reason, we want to increase happiness and we want to decrease unhappiness. Moksha, we want to get liberated from unhappiness. Sukhaya dukkha moksha, kurvanti dampati kriya. So for that reason, man and wife, husband and wife get together. But tata anivritir apraptir. However, thereafter, just the opposite happens. Dukkasya cha sukhasya cha. After trying so hard to be happy in marriage or whatever, in business and whatever, the misery increases and the happiness decreases. So Prabhupada tells a story in this regard, that there were two old men. They've known each other since grade school, and their habit was every day to get together at least for some time and chit-chat what's going on with you, what's going on with you, like that. They've been doing that their whole life. So one day, same thing, they get together, and one friend notices that the other friend is very morose. So he says, why are you so down? You have a nice wife, nice children, nice house, everything nice in your life. Why are you so down? Yeah, don't worry. No, come on, tell me. So the one who was asked, he said, you want to know why I'm morose? Because I realized that for the last 50 years, I've been trying to make this woman happy, and she's still not happy. That's why I'm morose. And that includes the other relationships also, not just husband and wife. Friend and friend, husband, parent and children, like that. We're trying so hard to make someone else happy because we realize if I don't at least make an attempt to make others happy, nobody will want to make me happy. So we learn to try to make others happy. And in spite of our endeavor, they're not happy. So this is material life. Whereas in spiritual life, if we can just make the spiritual master give us that little merciful sidelong glance, a little bit of happiness by endeavoring to carry out his instructions in order, then everything is complete. Everything is wonderful. When Prabhupada was here, if somebody could do something just to make Prabhupada smile, they would feel like their whole life has been successful. And just the opposite, if he did something that displeased Prabhupada. So the same Suradas, he tells a story. This was 75 or 76. I think it was 76. I wasn't in India in 75, but 76 I was there. We would go to Mayapur, and then after that we would go to Vrindavan for the festival. So on the trip, he got the good fortune of becoming Prabhupada's door guard in Vrindavan. Have you been to Prabhupada's quarters in Vrindavan? They're still there. So he got the assignment of guarding Prabhupada's door. So he's standing at the door, and after some time he hears Prabhupada's bell ringing, but he's not paying any attention because he's the door guard. There's supposed to be a servant inside to serve Prabhupada, and when Prabhupada rings the bell, the servant would run and find out what Prabhupada wants. So Surya is standing at the door, and again he hears a bell ring, and again he hears a bell ring. So he's wondering, what's going on? Why aren't they responding? And then Prabhupada opens the door. Very gravely, Prabhupada said, I am the spiritual master. You are the disciple. I'm ringing the bell, and you're not coming? So Surya was shaking. Because Tamal Krishna Maharaj had given him the assignment to stand there. He didn't know he had to respond to. And Prabhupada repeated again, I am the guru. You are the disciple. I am calling and you're not responding. So he didn't know what to do. So Prabhupada said, go get Tamal Krishna Maharaj. Tamal Krishna had gone somewhere. And Prabhupada closes the door. Now what to do? He has the assignment to guard Prabhupada's door. If he leaves the door, somebody may sneak in. But at the same time, Prabhupada told him, go get Tamal. What would you do? Think about it. What would you do? Would you leave the assignment of guarding the door and run the risk of anybody just walking in on Prabhupada? Or would you take Prabhupada's instruction and go get Tamal?
I would take Prabhupada's instruction and go get Tamal.
So after deliberating for some time, he was about to do that, but Krishna saved him. Somebody came along and he told the person, go get Tamal. So both things were accomplished. But anyway, the point of telling that story is that we always want to follow the Guru's instruction to always remember Krishna, never forget Krishna, engage in some practical devotional service. Not that you sit down all day, I'm meditating on Krishna. No, do some practical service. This is Prabhupada's movement. Work now, samadhi later. And we have to avoid in any way, shape, or form displeasing the spiritual master and displeasing Krishna. To displease the spiritual master means automatically displeasing Krishna. And we should not displease, as far as possible, even rank and file devotees. I've said this many times, that I've noticed over decades of being in ISKCON that anybody who becomes so big that they don't care how the regular devotees feel about them, and just the opposite, the regular devotees start to dislike them, they're not going to last. If you're not appreciated by the rank and file devotees because you're so big and you've done so many things that are not right, not proper, you're not going to last. So we have to be mindful of not offending anyone as far as possible. And that means also non-devotees. Not that, okay, I'm careful not to step on any devotee's toes, to always be on their good side, but the non-devotees, I don't care. They're ignorant. But no, every living entity is Krishna's eternal servant, and we have to treat them as such. They may not be aware of it, and therefore we may not associate with them closely, as Rupa Goswami recommends. Don't associate closely with those who are not in the devotional camp. But at the same time, we should try to avoid offending them in any way, as far as possible. So the Brahmanas today, to wrap up, they've killed Vena because he was blaspheming Krishna, not because he blasphemed them. He did. He blasphemed the Brahmanas, called them foolish in so many ways. They didn't care. But as soon as he blasphemed the Supreme Lord, boom, he was gone. And now there's disturbance because there's no king. Again, Prabhupada said they could have taken care of that also, but it's not their business. The business of the Brahmanas is to give advice to the princely order, the kingly order, so they can administrate the society properly. So they decided they have to have a new king, and you know the story coming up. So we'll stop here. Any questions, comments? Deva Varta Prabhu.
Thank you, Arcita Prabhu, for your sobering and straightforward presentation of Krishna consciousness. I had a question for you, Prabhu. You have a lot of experience, I think, with interfaith dialogues. You were doing that a lot in LA. Did you ever have someone raise the question of this verse which comes from the Bible? Christians like to quote it all the time. You die once and then the judgment. And if you did, what was your response to them?
You die once and then you're judged. And then, based on that judgment, your next situation is created. If you've advanced enough spiritually, then you'll go to the kingdom of God. If not, then you'll come back to this material world in different capacities. Again, based from that verse I just quoted, John 2. Based on what you've done in this life, you will be rewarded accordingly. And in the same Bible it says, as you sow, so you shall reap. So that doesn't mean just in this lifetime. That extends beyond this lifetime, because we see otherwise so many people seem to get away with something. Even murder. They've killed somebody and in this life they've never been brought to trial. Does that mean they got away? No. No. In the scheme of things, everything we do is witnessed. And this is the beginning of real God consciousness. This is why Prabhupada said even a common person in India is more advanced than big intellectuals in the West. Because they believe that. Everything I do is being witnessed. So I have to act properly. The problem is if you're not trained how to think properly, inevitably you're going to make mistakes. So the spiritual master's business is to train the disciple how to think properly so that we can act properly. Thinking leads to feeling, leads to willing, leads to action. So if we're properly trained how to think, then we will act properly. So it's the same thing in Christianity. Christ came not just to relieve you of your sins, sinful reactions, but to teach you how to act properly. And in order to act properly, you have to be trained how to think properly. If there is no, I always tell them when they bring up this point, if nothing survives the death experience, if we don't survive the death experience, then where's there any question of going to heaven or hell or In other words, you survive death. It's obvious. If you can go after death to heaven or to hell, then you must survive death. And they like to say, well, if you don't believe in Jesus, you'll burn in hell eternally. So I always point out to them, anything that can burn eternally is not actually burning. If you burn something, right, you light it, it burns, it's gone. But if you can burn eternally, then you're not actually burning. Yes, you may have a burning sensation, and that's what we learn from the Bhagavatam. You get sent to these different hells, some of which, you're subjected to so many different painful situations, but they don't last forever because the soul is eternal. And those painful situations are just there to wake us up so that we will again take to the path of righteousness, as the Christians would say. That okay? All right, it's okay. Sitaram, Prabhu.
And thank you, Arcita Prabhu, for your beautiful class. Again, the point about the sages killing King Vena, and then they choose to not perform some pious activity to reprimand the dacoits and the thieves, but yet still they started the ordeal. I find it was very strange that they didn't. Later on they churned the body of Vena, but they're saying now that they weren't interested in masterminding the plan to help the citizens, when it was the citizens in the first case who had appealed to them or had caused them to understand that, look, Vena is an atrocious king, he is performing many atrocities against Dharma, and so they get rid of him by their hunkara, by their strong shouting the mantras, whatever they were doing. But I'm simply thinking that was a kind of redundant or to know that they didn't.
Yeah, I get the point. It seems like an oversight on their part. But the point that Prabhupada makes is that in Vedic culture, the Brahmanas are not meant to kill. Their function in society is to give good advice to the kings who do the killing. The Kshatriyas a Kshatriya is one who's willing to put his own life on the line to save others, to protect others. That's their duty. The Brahmanas are meant to give advice to such proper Kshatriyas. And we see from your Sitaram, we know from that pastime of Ramchandra, that Vasishtha Muni had stated he could have killed the Rakshasas who were disturbing the sages in the forest. But it's not his job as a Brahmana. So he went to Mars Dasarat and said, give me your boys to go and take care of these disturbing elements. Because that's their duty as Kshatriyas. Their duty is to go and protect the sages and the people in general. Vasishtha could have killed them. He could have killed them, but he knows this is the duty of the Kshatriyas. So he went to Dasaratha and said, now these boys are trained, they can take care of this little problem, send them. And they went and they took care of it. That's their job. So in Vedic culture, everybody has their job to do. And that's also the difference between Varnashram and Vaishnavism. A Vaishnava can do anything at any moment for Krishna. Not that I'm a Brahmana, I only do this. I'm a Kshatriya, I only do that. No, Vaishnava means you can do anything for the pleasure of the Lord. But normal Varnashram means you stay in your lane. Your lane is to give advice, you stay there. Your lane is to kill and protect and therefore you're allowed to take tax and live very high life. That's the Kshatriyas. They could have big palace and many wives, and because they're duty bound to put their lives on the line. The Vaishyas, Krishigo Rakshavani jump, like that. So everybody had their lane to stay in. But a Vaishnava is above all of that. A Vaishnava can do anything. Look at Bhaktivinoda Thakur. By nature, you could say Brahminical. But when it was time to oppose all these elements that were disturbing the proper worship of Jagannath, like a lightning, even when he was threatened, even when his life was, practically he was taken away by this curse. He was dying. No, I will not back down. So Vaishnava can do anything. Vaishnavas can act like a Shudra if necessary, they can act like a Vaishnava, doesn't matter. They're above Varnashram. But these Brahmanas, they're in the Varnashram system, so they have to fulfill their Varnashram role. Okay? Hare Krishna. It's breakfast time. We're a little late. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. Hare Krishna, Srila Prabhupada.